Hey there, it's Chris and welcome back to the channel. In my 2 years into this espresso hobby, I've been able to check out a lot of different machines, including the Flare 58, Profitec Pro, Rocket Appartamento, and Elite Bianca. Today, I'm reviewing the Profitec Pro 700, a German-made espresso machine. Now before we continue with the review, here are a few disclosures. Firstly, this was sent to me by Profitec in collaboration with one of their US distributors, Whole Latte Love, so shout out to both for sending this over. Be sure to use my affiliate links in the description down below to continue to help support the channel and help me get more machines to review. Second, this is not sponsored. Nobody's looking at this review before it goes live and no money exchanged hands. All thoughts and opinions are entirely my own, as they always are in all of my review videos. And third, this version of the Profitec Pro 700 is modified with the flow control knob that is compatible with a lot of E61 machines. And finally, I have only had this machine for about a month now, but I do feel like I've had enough time and experience to give a full review, so this isn't necessarily going to be a long-term review into the longevity of this machine. So with that out of the way, let's get started with what you get in the box. So in the box, you get this drip tray, you get a drip tray riser piece, both covered in a protective film. You also have some pieces for plumbing the machine in. Both the water line and drip tray are plumbable on this machine. With the rest of the accessories kit, you also get a blind basket and two portafilters, one with a single spout and one with a double spout. And I wish there would have been a bottomless portafilter included too, but that's not an issue since most machines don't include one anyway. Anyways, let's move on to the build quality. Espresso machines are, as you likely very well know, of Italian descent and design, but this machine is manufactured in Germany by Profitec, which is a sister company to ECM. German design is historically known to be innovative, sophisticated, and generally considered high quality, and that absolutely holds true here as well. But first, let's run through some of the specs of this machine. This is an incredibly feature-packed machine. It's an E61 58mm group head machine featuring two stainless steel boilers, both of which are PID temperature controlled with a little control pad in the front. This machine is quite large, even bigger than my Elite Bianca, which was bigger than my Rocket Appartamento, which was bigger than the Profitec Pro. This machine is 19 inches deep, 17 inches tall, and 14 inches wide, and incredibly heavy, weighing in at nearly 70 pounds or just over 32 kilos. Before you ask, yes, it was very difficult to haul up the stairs into my apartment. This machine is filled via a water reservoir tank underneath the top lid and has a huge 101 fluid ounce capacity, or about 3 liters. The drip tray has a capacity of about 32 fluid ounces, or just under a liter. The steam wand in the machine is a no-burn steam wand with a nice little rubber piece to hold on to as well. This is a dual hole tip steam wand, which has been a little challenging for me to steam with compared to what I'm used to in the Elite Bianca, not because of the dual holes, but because of its insane power. The steam here is incredibly powerful, and I like to crank the steam boiler up to the maximum temperature to get the most out of it, though honestly I should probably take it back down just a little bit. Materials all around in this machine are super premium feeling, with lots of sturdy stainless steel used and chrome-plated brass on the group and included portafilters. There are a few nice detailed parts to this machine that I particularly like, but also a few that I don't. Starting with what I do like first, unlike traditional bent steel panels you see on most machines, these ones are super thick. They have a nice soft bevel to it, and yes, referencing that infamous review, the panels have minimal warping in your reflection for whatever that's worth. I like that the top panel has this second layer to act as a cup warming tray, and the top surface holes don't overlap with the holes underneath it, which is great in case you happen to place a wet cup or spill a little liquid on top, minimizing the chance of water making it into the internals. The cup rail, however, does have some rough edges, as do some other stainless steel components, but I mentioned this one specifically because it sits right on top of the machine for all to see. Because of the way this top surface is, you would have to remove all of your cups from the surface to refill the machine, which definitely can be a moderate annoyance at times. Another thing I did notice is that the top surface isn't actually completely flat, it's slightly warped, which I'm not sure if that could be an issue from the heat, but it's something I thought I'd mention anyway. The knobs here are all excellent with very minimal play to them, certainly better feeling than the knobs on both the Elite Bianca and previously the Rocket Appartamento, at least in my opinion. The drip tray grate does have a very tight tolerance, which is both very cool and very nice, but also sometimes a very minor inconvenience just to have to remove and put back in. The integration of the switches for the steam boiler and swapping between a plumbed in versus a water tank is a nice touch as well. The feet on this machine are solid and minimally height adjustable, so while the machine itself is about 19 inches in depth, you could get away with something like a 17-inch depth countertop, although for safety reasons I can't recommend that and would recommend you get something that's definitely big and can hold the weight of a machine of this size and weight. Because of the wider footprint of the machine, I do like that the hot water valve can sit facing front nicely and doesn't have to be awkwardly scooched to the side to allow for the lever use, unlike some of the machines I've used in the past. What I am not a fan of, and this isn't necessarily a fault of the machine, is the flow control integration. This is an add-on for E61 groups and it allows for flow control, but I don't like it for one main reason compared to the paddle on my Elite Bianca. and that reason being, it's simply not as nice to use. The paddle is nice and linear, while this knob is small. It does rotate more than 360 degrees to open it up, but it's just not very ergonomic, being a little plastic ball. I'll save more thoughts versus the Bianca for a future comparison video between these two machines. Like most E61 espresso machines, you will follow the same steps: dose, grind, tamp, puck screen, link in description below by the way, lock, pull, steam, and pour. Where this machine differs is in the flow control and PID functionality. So let's talk about the little screen in the front. It's a little LED display with two buttons, a plus and a minus. The machine allows for you to set the temperature of each boiler using that little display, but it's definitely not the most intuitive little screen. You have to press a combination of the plus and the minus switch between modes labeled as T1 and T2, which refer to each of the boilers. From there, you can then set the temperature of each. You can also program in a cleaning reminder so that after an X amount of cycles up to 200, it will give you a reminder to clean your machine. And you can also program in an eco mode, which basically turns down the temps of the boilers, and from eco, I've found that it generally takes about maybe 10 or so minutes to bring the brewing and steaming back up to temp. Although this might vary depending on how long you're waiting after it goes into that eco mode. Speaking of which, the eco mode can also be programmed in increments of 30 minutes of when it should kick in. Now, one weird thing is that I have heard from people and read that when your tank is empty, the display should flash fill, but mine doesn't, and I'm not sure why. In fact, I thought my machine was broken at one point because the light was on, the display was off, and nothing was working. Turns out it was just out of water. So I'm not sure if that's a common issue or maybe there's a specific setting I have to turn on or off, but I thought I'd mention it anyway. Now in terms of the flow control functionality, here are some of the statistics that I have measured from its output. From this resting position, aka 0%, obviously you're getting no flow. At 25% or about a 90-degree turn, you're getting about 5.5 grams in 10 seconds. At 50%, you're getting 24 grams, at 75%, 55 grams, at 100%, 75 grams, at 125%, 90 grams, at 150%, 106 grams, and at 175%, you are getting 125 grams out in 10 seconds. Now, it can keep opening up further and further, but I don't anticipate anybody going beyond 175%. In fact, I personally haven't really needed to go beyond 100%. For quick reference, the 100% of the flow on the Lily Bianca outputs about 52 grams, and it outputs 14 grams at 25%. So that 100% on the Lily Bianca is equivalent to about the output at 75% on the Profitec Pro 700. Despite the large range of flow outputs on this machine, again, I've only found myself sticking going up to about 100% at a max. And once again, I'm not a huge fan of the integration of it, simply for ergonomic reasons. The paddle is just a lot nicer to use in the Bianca versus this little plastic ball on the Profitec Pro's E61 group. That being said, it is still fully functional. Next up, let's talk about the steam wand. This is a 2-hole tip steam wand, and the steam boiler can be programmed up to 133 degrees Celsius and reaches about 1.5 bars of pressure, which is a lot of pressure. This machine has the strongest steaming power on any I have tried yet in my personal experience. Going from the Gadget Classic Pro to the Rocket Apartamento felt like a huge jump in power. From the Rocket to the Elite felt like a bit of a smaller jump, and going from the Elite to the Profitec feels like a relatively bigger jump yet again. I have found that there's a little bit more of a learning curve to having this extra power because it steams so much faster. I've had to also reduce the initial air incorporating phase pretty drastically and focus on texturing more. I'm happy to say that if you do need to steam lots of milk, you'll have absolutely no issues with this machine, although there is a very slight annoyance with the fact that there's barely any clearance when using a very large milk pitcher. Okay, and now for what I don't like about this machine, and I'm happy to say that there isn't really too much besides what I've already touched on earlier. First up, the flow control integration, which really is no fault of the machine itself, more so that added on unit. Next, the top surface strip tray, which has its pros, also has a minor annoyance to it by having to remove it entirely to refill the machine. Third, the little rougher edges on the exposed cup rails, which kind of take away from the nice and smooth feel from the rest of the build. And finally, poor UI on the little display, which again, in fact, I thought was broken at one point when it was completely blank. Turns out just meant it was out of water. So is it worth it? This feature-rich machine sits at about $3,000 and closer to $3,200 with flow control. Now this isn't going to be a comparison video to the Lily Bianca, that's for a later time. This machine does offer a lot. Dual boilers, PID on both, huge steam power, and excellent build quality. It produces great espresso with the ability to flow control and has some insane steam for making milk drinks back to back to back. A machine like this will likely be an endgame tier machine for most people. It's certainly within an endgame price tag, not looking at Eula Marzocco owners. The build quality is outstanding, the machine itself has all the features you'd likely ever want from an espresso machine. So I'd say this machine is worth it. At this price range, you don't have a lot of competition other than the ECM Synchronica, which is a sister company and sister product, and of course the Lily Bianca, which again is going to be a comparison for a different time. So anyways, that's going to be my review of the Profitec Pro 700. Let me know down in the comment section below if you have any feedback, thoughts, concerns, or questions about this machine, and I'll do my best to answer. Once again, thanks for watching. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one.